most of what you read about in the Old Testament is people failing to live up to God's righteousness, and there'll be consequences to that. One of the main big consequences was the flood, destroying everybody but 8 people. Possibly 4 billion people died in the flood. And then we've gotten up to the Tower of Babel, which the people didn't do what God wanted them to do. So he had to confuse all their languages and spread them out over the world that way. And then the children of Israel are, God chooses through Abraham, through one man, to just bring one family down through, to bring the Christ into the world who would save all mankind. And that brought us to the family of Abraham, and how through Joseph, all of them ended up down in Egypt. Started with 70 people, or was it 75 people down in Egypt, and then grew to a large number by the time they came out of the captivity. And while we were talking about Egypt, I wanted to talk about Hatshepsut. And these are just a couple of renditions of, well, this first one is actually a rendition of her. Now, just like artists of today, they may have fudged a little bit and made her more beautiful than she really was, or maybe it was a good likeness. We don't know, although the things that are written about her that you can read in the writings on the walls and things like that. She was a very beautiful woman, at least in her young years. And let's see, I'm trying to remember exactly where we got to, but we were talking about how that she was, she's in the 18th dynasty of the pharaohs of Egypt, and her father was Thutmose the first, and her mother was Almos, and then she became the wife of her stepbrother Thutmose the second, and then Thutmose the second had 2 wives, and one wife was called Isis. Well, he had at least 2 wives, but one wife was called Isis, and she had a child, and they named him Thutmose the third. And so Thutmose III was actually Hatshepsut's stepson. He's the one that became pharaoh after Thutmose II died. Thutmose II died kind of young, and so Thutmose III was only 2 years old when he became pharaoh. Gene, did you?
Thutmose III is the one that Moses dealt with.
That's what I believe, yeah. Anyway, because Thutmose III was so young, obviously he couldn't actually perform the duties of a pharaoh, of leader of a powerful nation. And so Hatshepsut took the reins, and the original intention, I presume, was to run things until Thutmose III got old enough to do it, and then she had handed over. But I guess it's kind of like Queen, what's her name now? Elizabeth? Queen Elizabeth. She's not turning over the reins. She's there are people that could be king, but for some reason, she's just hanging on to the bitter end. Anyway, that's probably what Hatshepsut did as well. And she reigned for 21 or 22 years. And like I said last week, she had a funeral. It wasn't a pyramid, but it was a funeral palace, for lack of a better term, in the Valley of the Kings. And there were 2 sarcophaguses, which are those big stone rectangular things that they put the actual casket inside and then put a stone lid over it. But both of them were empty in 1902 or 1903 when Howard Carter discovered it. And so he assumed that tomb robbers had just taken it all, but they found other mummies, which and I mentioned last week, in 2007, they discovered that one of these mummies that was just put into another room was actually Hatshepsut. And they surmised that when Tomb Raiders started robbing everything, some of the priests took the mummies out of their sarcophagus or sarcophagi and put them in what they thought was a safe place so that at least the bodies wouldn't be desecrated. And that's why a lot of these mummies are not located in their tombs where they belong. And so we do have quite a few of we have Tutmos's mummy as well. And now, as of 2007, just not many years ago, they discovered her. And so now you can go to the museum and see her mummy there. Anyway, Gene?
Where does Ramses and Ramses II fit in all this?
There were a couple hundred years later. There's two theories that are held by biblical scholars. One of which is that the early date for the captivity and for the Exodus being 1446 BC, and then the other school of thought is that it was under Ramesses that the Exodus took place, like in the 1200s BC. And one of the main reasons for believing that is that there's a passage that says something about the children of Israel. They built Ramesses, so they built the city Ramesses. And so obviously, according to this reasoning, they couldn't have built a city Ramesses if Ramesses wasn't even alive yet. And so it wouldn't have been called Ramesses. But I think the answer to that is one of my sons lives in Carnation, Washington, a little town over there. Well, this Carnation started out as a town called Tolt, named after the Tolt Indians. And then after many years, along comes this company that makes milk and butter and things called Carnation. They wanted to build a factory someplace. And so they said, we'll move here if you'll rename the city Carnation. Well, do you want jobs in your city or not? How bad do you like the name Tolt? Well, so they changed the name to Carnation. But if I had said, like in 1890, so-and-so moved into Carnation, you wouldn't think anything of it. But really, they didn't move into Carnation, did they? They moved into Tolt, but it later became Carnation. And that's the answer to saying the children of Israel built a city, but it wasn't called Ramesses until after Ramesses came and renamed it Ramesses. But by the time the book was written, everybody knew it as Ramesses. And so you don't say, you shorten it up, say they built Ramesses rather than they built the city formerly known as, or previously, or currently known as Ramesses, whatever. So anyway, that's an answer to that little conundrum. But anyway, going along with the early date, which fits with 1 Kings 6, I think it is, where it tells us when Solomon built the first temple, or built Solomon's temple. That all scholars pretty much agree that was 966 BC, that their work was started on Solomon's temple. And so going back from 966, you get to 1446, because it says, one of the scriptures says that it was 480 years after the children of Israel left Egypt, that Solomon's temple started, and it was 480 years to the day. So going back from 966, 480 years puts you at 1446 BC. And so that's the date that I believe is correct as far as the date of the Exodus. And that puts you right in the reign of Thutmose III. So anyway, I wanted to talk about some of her accomplishments. I think I read some of these things last week. The main thing I wanted you to see is that he was this oh well it's talking about Thoth, you know. Tutmos is like, means thought is born, and so he's named after this god Thoth, and the god Thoth was the god of the moon, wisdom, writing, hieroglyphs, science, magic, art, and judgment. Just keep those things in mind. We'll talk about them in just a little bit. But as far as accomplishments goes, as Pharaoh, Hatshepsut undertook ambitious building projects, particularly in the area around Thebes. Now, Thebes is known today as, anybody know? No, Luxor. So you hear about Luxor today, but it was Thebes back then, and that's another one of those. She built this temple at Luxor, but really it was Thebes that she built it at. Anyway, this is one of the things that she built, this enormous memorial temple at Deir el Bahari, and it's considered one of the architectural wonders of ancient Egypt. I guess you can probably see people. This place was bigger than the Parthenon, and like 1,000 years before the Parthenon was ever built. And all of these, I don't know if you can see it or not, but right here, there's a statue. Every one of those pillars had one of those in front of it at one time, and all along here as well. Let me just show you back. These two on the right-hand side, that's two of the statues. So those, they had those carved in front of every one. I mean, it was just a gorgeous, fantastic place, especially for the time that it was, 1500 BC. How long has that been till now? 3,500 years, and they're still there. Can you imagine building anything today and then having it last 3,500 years? Anyway, this was has just been unearthed. I don't know for sure if it was in our lifetime or just before in the 1800s, but it's so recent comparatively. People didn't know, and that's one of the reasons why people never talked about Hatshepsut, is because they didn't know much. But as they unearthed this stuff in the Valley of the Kings, they're learning more and more and more about. Another thing that she built was like, she was a prolific builder, commissioning hundreds of construction projects and statuary. She had monuments constructed of the Temple of Karnak and restored the original precinct of Mut at Karnak. Mut was a female god. I don't know. I'm sure Mut didn't mean what it means to us today. But anyway, it had been ravaged during the Hyksos. There was a period of time when foreigners ruled Egypt called the Hyksos. And after that occupation was ended, then she rebuilt that original temple of Karnak. And then she also erected 4 of these. 2 of them were here and 2 of them were in another place. But at the time, this was the tallest obelisk in the world. And she had it, notice it's out of one thing. It's been standing for 3,500 years. I mean, it's one thing for a short building to stand, but this obelisk, I think it's
Must be solid.
yeah, it is solid, and it withstood earthquakes and who knows what else. One of them has fallen down. Obviously, you can't see it there. And the other 2 that are in another place are not standing, but so there's one of those that still remain. I forget how tall they were, but like a 50-story building. I mean, tall. Anyway,
And how did they build those back then?
well, it's
Didn't they
interesting.
have cranes and all that?
It's really interesting because she was building another one and it's still laying there in the quarry.
Oh, so they build it laying down and then stand it up.
Yeah, how they got it there, I'm not sure how any of that stuff happened. I'm sure you could read about it, but it's laying there, and you can see exactly the process they were using to chisel it out of the quarry. So it's kind of like a half-done project that got stopped, and so anyway, you can, the scientists learned a ton about how they quarried stuff by looking at this one obelisk that's still there, and you can go see it today. It's still there. Anyway, Karnak's Red Chapel, which is one of the things that they uncovered not too long ago, was intended as a shrine to her life, and all we have of it is descriptions. We don't know where it is, but it may have been right here with this, but they just haven't collected enough evidence to know exactly where it is. Anyway, there's another temple called the Temple of Pakhet. This was a monument to two war goddesses, Bast and Sekhmet. They were lionesses according to their mythology. Anyway, that's just another thing. So she did tons of building, more than anybody else, tons and tons of building. But she also established trade networks that helped build the wealth of the 18th dynasty. And this included a successful mission to the land of Punt in the 9th year of her reign, which brought live myrrh trees and frankincense, which Hatshepsut used as coal eyeliner. Coal meaning black as coal, that kind of coal. Anyway, we don't even know where Punt was, but it was far away. She says in her inscriptions that are found inside the walls of some of these temples, it says that it was a long journey that included land and water. And so they went by land and water. Most scholars, I think it probably was down way south in Africa. They found this stuff and brought live trees back up so that they could have them a continuous supply of myrrh. Anyway, this says she may have led military campaigns against Nubia, which is down south. Nubia is down here, and up into Palestine, but there's no specific evidence of that. Just some conjecture, I guess, on the part of some of the scholars from some of the things that are written in her inscriptions. But anyway, now it's time for the rest of the story. If the date 1446 is correct, which I think it was, then one day there was a young girl, daughter of a pharaoh, was walking alongside a river, and she saw a basket floating in the reeds. And she went and had her servants go get it, and saw that there was a little baby in there. This girl, this daughter of Pharaoh, was probably 9 years old or so, not very old, and thought, how cute, this little darling baby. And she went to her daddy and says, Daddy, I want to have this baby. I want to raise him up. And dads, being the kind of people they are with their little girls, said, okay, what are you going to name him? And she said, I'm going to name him after you, Dad. I'm going to call him your Tut Moshe. I'm going to name him Moshe, who is Moses. Hatshepsut, there's a really great argument for it. Hatshepsut was the daughter of Pharaoh, who brought up and protected this child that God had chosen to be the one to lead the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt. She protected him all his young life. She taught him all the arts. Remember, Tut is the god of wisdom, writing. Did Moses do any writing? Did he have wisdom? The god of, oh, I have to go back now, so I'll get them all. Well, on the bottom here, it says, he was the god of the arts of magic, the system of writing, the judgment of the dead. Does it have anything to do with people that did any magic?
Something about Pharaoh's sort of able to throw the gods down and keep state, just like Aaron did.
Exactly. The
That
magic.
was all given to him from God. Right?
What's that?
He had that ability from God.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that Aaron did magic or Moses did magic. They did real miracles.
Yeah.
But these guys were heavy into magic, and that's why
They believed him.
they were able to perform all these tricks to make it look like they were doing what Moses and Aaron were doing. But anyway, he was raised up in this whole system, and then he used all the knowledge and the abilities, the language and the writing. He used all that in order to write down the scriptures, write down the law of Moses, and the first 5 books of the Bible written by Moses. So anyway, and then what do you think God would do for this woman, starting out as a girl, but this woman who cared for his chosen one all this time, protected him, educated him, and did all that? Do you think he would curse her? What do you think he would do? He would protect her. He would bless her like nobody's business. Just think about Rahab. She protected God's spies and let him exit, and so she was blessed. God does that kind of stuff, and so that it would explain, how did this woman get to be Pharaoh of Egypt, even though she was a woman? She wasn't the only Pharaoh, but she was the greatest of all of them, one of the greatest pharaohs of all, and blessed like for 22 years, all of her life, she was blessed greatly in her reign over the Egyptians. And I believe that all of that is, what do you call it in a court of law? What kind of evidence what am I trying to think of? Circumstantial evidence. All of that is circumstantial evidence that it was Hatshepsut that was, and also another piece of evidence is she was the only woman who was even available to be the daughter. Pharaoh Thutmose I had other children, but they died young. She was the only woman who could have been the one at this time as well. And that put all that together. That's why I think it was this early date. Well, just think about it. She named her child Moses. Mosa in Egyptian. One of the spellings for Thutmose is Tutmosis, Mosis. Moses sounds exactly like Moses, doesn't it? Anyway, his name was Tutmosis. His wife's name was Moses. Hatshepsut's husband's name was Tutmosis. Does it make sense that she would name her child Moses? Because the word Moses means drawn out or born. And she drew him out of the water, and it just fits perfect with the events that happened right here. That's the reason I believe in the early date. I mean, that's part of the reason for the early date, and that I think that it was Hatshepsut was the wife, or was the daughter of Pharaoh, that raised up Moses. And it also fits because she died, and it would have been during the time that Moses was off in the land of, what was it, Midian? Can't remember now. Anyway, while he was off, that's when she died. She would be kind of like a stepmother to him. And another reason that she would want to have a son is because she didn't have any of her own. And so if she was only 9 years old, obviously it wouldn't be an issue because she would expect to have children along the way. But as time passed, she had very good reason to keep him and protect him because he was the only son she ever had, even though he would have been adopted, or at least she was raising him as a son. Anyway, I just thought that was so interesting. And to me, it's really faith building to see how all of this stuff works together. And yet it's not even mentioned in the Bible. It says Pharaoh's daughter, that's all. It's not super important. If it was important, Moses would have written it down. God would have had it recorded. But the Pharaohs aren't mentioned by name, but it really helps us as far as all this stuff they're discovering in Egypt. It just keeps piling on proof, evidence right in our lifetime. And it's just, to me, it's really awesome that this stuff happened. And so you can't prove it from the Bible because Hatshepsut is never mentioned by name. Thutmose is never mentioned by name. Ramesses, I think I don't want to say because I'm not sure. I know the city Ramesses is mentioned, but I'm not sure Pharaoh Ramesses is mentioned by name or not. But anyway, for the most part, God doesn't name the Egyptian leadership. But anyway, any comments or questions anybody has about anything up to this point?
They're the same after the children of Israel were in Egypt and Moses led them out and so on. And Pharaoh and his army lost their lives, or John in the Red Sea. Well, anyway, up to that time, Egypt was a great nation, but the most powerful nation on earth. They never have been since then.
Right. They raised their head a few times on down through. Ramesses was a very, very powerful pharaoh, and they did raise their heads up, and there were battles like the Battle of Carchemish, for example, was fought between the Babylonians and the Egyptians right at Megiddo. And Israel was caught in the middle of that one. And so they were powerful, but probably not as powerful as they had become under Hatshepsut and some of the other pharaohs of the time. Her dad, Thutmose I, had been a warrior kind of a pharaoh, and so they had done some conquests. But anyway, they had a reputation of being a very strong nation, but they were set back quite a bit. As far as why you don't see recordings of this in the Egyptian writings, it's pretty obvious. It's just like with Babylon, for example. The Babylonians mentioned Haparu, the Hebrew people, and they even mentioned with Nebuchadnezzar, he was really big on having all his exploits written down and glorified everything that he did. And he talks about this campaign that he made down to Egypt and all the people that he had conquered along the way. And it says about the Haparu, the Hebrew, he says the name of the king, I guess it was Hezekiah. Now I'm getting it mixed up. I think it's Nebuchadnezzar, or anyway, I believe it's that. But in the Babylonian Chronicle, it's a clay tablet that's written in cuneiform that you can go, and it's in the British Museum. I've seen it myself. Sue's seen it, if she doesn't remember it, I know she saw it because I made her look at it. But
I had jet lag.
I may be getting confused because anyway, it says Hezekiah, or whichever king it was, I had caged up like a bird. That's all he could say about that, and all he would say, because what happened was 186,000 men were killed, just dropped dead, and that's not something that you want to brag about when you go there. So he doesn't even mention it. So the reason I'm even saying that is because that's how these kings were. If they don't have anything to brag about, they don't write it down. And if anybody does write it down, they make sure it gets erased. And so that's another reason also why perhaps all of Hatshepsut's stuff, Tutmos tried to erase it, because she had been the one to raise up Moses, who turned out to be an arch enemy, so to speak, taking all these children of Israel out and responsible for the death of all these Egyptian army. And so we don't like her anymore. Let's get rid of her memory. So anyway, it explains all of this stuff. It's all circumstantial evidence. And so that's where we'll leave it for right now. Anybody have another anything? Okay. Well, well, you have the conquest of Canaan, I guess, before I start talking about the judges. How did the conquest of Canaan go? Children of Israel leave Egypt. What happens?
Start here.
Wander in the wilderness.
Yeah. Okay, the wandering in the wilderness. What was supposed to happen? They left Egypt, crossed the Red Sea.
Supposed to go to the land of Canaan.
They sent the spies in and they came back with negative thoughts, all except for 2.
Okay, 10 out of 12 spies says, look, we're like grasshoppers and they're giants. We can't take them. 10 of them. 2 of them said what?
Yes, with God's help.
With God's help, we can do it. And those 2 were named Caleb and Joshua. And they says, we can do it with God's help. And so we have, I don't know what that percentage is, 10 out of 12. It's a high percentage had no faith in God that we can do it. So what did God do?
Made
Gave
them
them the victory.
wonder for a minute until all of those people died.
All right, until you're going to wander in this wilderness, and none of you all who are what age?
40 and above. 40, no.
It's not 40. It's more like 20. It's fighting age. It's from fighting age and above. All of you guys, except for 2, Joshua and Caleb, will not make it, will not enter into the land of Canaan. How many people was that?
Wow.
603,000 men, stated in the Bible, 603,000 men. Now, if all the men died along, what about the women and anybody else that were of an age? Do you think they made it?
No.
And so about how many people do you think died in the wilderness?
Million.
At least double
Yeah.
the 600,000. So a lot of people, first of all, a lot of people went into the land of Canaan, or into the wilderness wandering. And in 40 years, a lot of them died. Now, they may not have all we know, the Bible says, is the men didn't make it, only 2 men. And that was 600,000. So does God punish people for lack of faith,
Yes.
for disobedience?
Yes.
Yeah. Has he already done it numerous times already up until now? The flood, Cain,
Tower of Babel.
Tower of Babel. Now, right after a great deliverance out of the land of Egypt, they immediately don't have any faith after after going through the Red Sea, parted by God. It says, oh no, we we can't go against these giants. So anyway, they wander in the wilderness for 40 years because of it. So then, once that's all done, and even Moses was punished because of what?
He didn't give God the credit.
Yeah, taking God's credit for himself regarding the bringing forth of water from the stone. And God says, because of that, you're not going in either. So just before they entered in the land of Canaan, Moses departed. What happened to him? Yeah, he was taken to the top of Mount Nebo. You can look at it, but you're not going. How sad that is. As we think about it, how sad it must have been for him, all that he went through, because he had tried to take credit himself for something that God did. How often do we take credit for stuff when we know good and well, I wouldn't be able to do this if it wasn't for God? You know, that's one thing I need to work on myself, is giving God credit. You know, if I do something, it's so easy, you know, oh, thank you, you're such a wonderful person, all blah, blah. No, it's God that's wonderful, not me. You know, whatever I have is from God. I need to do that more, give God more glory in my everyday life. So anyway, Canaan conquest began. Who led the people? Joshua and Caleb did. Joshua in particular. And what did Joshua say at the end once everything was done? What was the last thing he said?
And as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
Exactly. It was his faith that got them as where they got to. He said, you can choose, but they had moved in there and they already were trying to adopt the idolatrous worship of the people that they were in. And why did they do that? Because they hadn't done one thing. And what was that? God said, drive everybody out or kill everybody. What did they do? They left a whole bunch of people alive. Those people acted as bad influences on them, and they started following after their gods. And Joshua said, well, you choose, you decide today who you're going to serve, whether these gods over here or God. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. So even with the conquest, they didn't even do that right. Even though God let them go in and take the land, they didn't even do that right. And we're going to find when we look at the judges that they got punished time after time after time after time. There's 15 judges. Othniel, Ehud, Shamgar, Deborah, Gideon, Abimelech, Tola, Jair, Jephthah, Ibzan, Elon, Samson, Eli, Samuel. Every one of them had to deliver the children of Israel out of some mess they got themselves into. Well, I guess we got a little bit of time. Here's all of them. Othniel, well, I should have got my Bible out. And about half of these cases, other half is just implied, but it says, and the children of Israel did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. And because of that, he brought, in the first case with Othniel, it was Cushan Rishathaim, who was the name of the king of Mesopotamia at the time. He brought him down. They attacked Israel, and Othniel whipped up an army and went and fought against them and delivered the children of Israel. And they said, oh, well, first of all, they had done evil in sight of God. So God sent this Mesopotamian down there with his army. And the people, oh, God, we're sorry. We shouldn't have done that. You know, we'll turn back to you. And so God lets Othniel has Othniel deliver them, and they're fine for as long as Othniel's alive. What happens as soon as Othniel dies? The children of Israel did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. And so Moab comes knocking on their door. Oh, Lord, please help us. So God says, Ehud to deliver them. Shamgar, we don't even know. It's not even told. We're not told what nation it was, other than that he delivered them. Deborah, it was the Canaanites. Canaanites shouldn't have even been there because they were supposed to destroy the Canaanites, but they turned against Israel and badgered that caused them a lot of problems. So Deborah delivered them from the Canaanites. With Gideon, it was the Midianites. And in each case, the children of Israel did what was wrong. And so for 40 years at a time or so, while this judge was alive, they were fine. But as soon as that judge would die, they're off to the races, chasing after idols again. Time after time after time. With Abimelech, it wasn't external strife, it was internal strife with Shechem, and some awful things happening. You have to read Judges to get that. That's not my point, as learning all the specific details, but with Abimelech, it was internal problems that he had to fight through and deliver them from that. Then there was Tola and Jair. We don't know who they delivered them from. Jephthah, the Ammonites had attacked and they repented, and so he delivered them. Ibzan and Elon were not told. Samson and Eli and Samuel were all Philistine issues. Philistines were really strong at the time and kept pestering and badgering the children of Israel. And so all three of those judges dealt with the Philistines. So anyway, you just have time after time after time of the children of Israel messing up. And these are God's chosen people. Forget about the rest of the people in the world who God just left to their own, left to their own devices to do whatever their conscience told them, so to speak. And so even God's chosen people did nothing. Well, it was more messing up than doing right. Let's put it that way. And so that's where we have to stop today. The next step in this will be Israel once again messes up and they ask for a king. We'll start talking about that next week. Any quick questions or comments? Okay, if not,